So the coolant should be changed after the first 100,000 miles driven or within 10 years. And then after that, every 50,000 miles driven or every 5 years. All right, hello everyone. Today I'm going to be working on a Toyota Corolla 2009 for a coolant flush. What is a coolant flush? It's when you take the coolant out of the radiator by draining it. And I'm going to help you locate exactly where the drain plug is for this coolant flush. This is a very important task because if contaminants or tap water happen to manage to get inside of your radiator, I'm just going to show you where the plug is. Right there. Turn on the flash, please. There it is. That's it. That's the drain plug. So just get a little draining pan and unscrew this, I believe. What the heck? I wonder if I need like a pair of pliers for this thing, because it's pretty, honestly, it's pretty hard to get out. Alright, and so for the coolant drain plug, I'm going to be using these plier clamps. These actually are wide and very easy to use. You'll see just how effective they are compared to some needle nose pliers. Let's grab it. Oops. Missed. It's able to firmly grasp it, and I was able to make a full turn, but did not remove it. I'm just going to use my hands now that it's loosened. It should be, oh, there we go. Just like that. And that's how you drain the coolant. We're just going to wait a bit until it all drains out. So just as a reminder, it's going to be on the driver's side. Now the reason why you don't want to put hose water or tap water instead of coolant inside of your vehicle is because these vehicles run on a specific type of coolant, which is made with distilled water. If you put tap water in there, it will damage your water pump and it will damage your engine. Both. Your gasket for your engine and your water pump gasket is going to get damaged, especially the water pump gasket, which is going to destroy your engine because then you're going to overheat. So I do not recommend using tap water. Always use Asian vehicles, red and pink antifreeze coolant for Toyota model cars. This one is for 1990s and newer. This is all you need. Make sure that your drain pan is 8 quarts. Alright, so once the first bit of coolant has drained, go under here and retighten the coolant plugged in. And we're going to be filling the system with distilled water, like those about over there. So just plug that all the way back in. Now the reason why we need to run the engine for 10 to 15 minutes each time we put in a gallon of distilled water is to mix the fluids and to clean it. Okay, now put the radiator cap back on there, and we're going to be preparing to run the car for at least 20 to 30 minutes. with the distilled water inside so we can flush out any pollutants. Okay, So now that the water is inside of the radiator system, you're going to want to turn the car on. Alright, now let the distilled water run through the water pump and filter out any contaminants into the distilled water, and then we're going to drain it out. While that's happening, make sure to drain the drain pan so that we could drain the water out later. Okay, the engine was turned off. I'm just going to show you that the water jugs that you use in order to flush out the system, the empty water jug can be used to take out the old coolant. So it's another good reason to do a coolant flush whenever it is you're going to change the coolant out. Definitely get the distilled water so that you can do the job properly. Alright, now I'm draining the distilled water out, and I had the engine run. You want to be careful because this should be hot boiling water. It actually does feel hot, but it doesn't feel super hot. Just curious about that. Make sure to loosen it. You can use a hose, that would be better. I'm just being cheap about it and just draining it out like this. Hey, I just wanted to point out one thing, that I did not put coolant in there and drain this. This is actually the distilled water that I drained. So I'm actually going to add 2 gallons of distilled water in order to complete the flush so that I can see a little bit more clear of water, because this is very dirty. That means that the radiator is still very dirty. Alright, and you'll notice that I actually used about 3/4 of a gallon here of distilled water, and it is full for the most part, so I'm just going to put the rest of this in the reservoir. Okay, this water looks much more clear than the last one, but it's not quite transparent enough. So really, I think you would want to use about 5 gallons of distilled water, but since I don't really have that, I'm just gonna say it's been flushed out enough. But yeah, I definitely recommend at least getting a pump and pumping all of that water out, and then doing at least 1 gallon of distilled water, and then put in 2 gallons of coolant after that with the pump if necessary. Alright, and now after filtering out the contaminants using distilled water and turning on the engine so that the water pump can run, put in coolant and
according
run
to
the vehicle,
I put in a sufficient
and
amount
then drain
of distilled water
this coolant and add more, or just leave it as is. It depends on you actually, but I would recommend using at least 4 gallons of distilled water before putting in coolant. Okay. After draining the distilled water and doing the flush by running the engine, you're gonna re-add in the coolant, and then the coolant flush should be complete for the most part. But I would seriously use more than 2 gallons of distilled water in order to do a proper coolant flush. I might even recommend doing at least 4 gallons of distilled water just to be on the safe side, but I'm trusting that what I did is enough. I used 2 gallons, and then I have 2 containers of coolant, and I think that's actually going to be fine, because
I would also recommend
the coolant that's on the inside is diluted. So I'm going to end up flushing it out with this stuff
2 gallons
and then draining it, and then putting in the second thing of antifreeze, and then that will be a complete cycle for me. Alright, and for this next part, I'm just going to show you how transparent this water is, just so that you can maybe consider using just 2 gallons, but I'm going to end up draining it with the coolant just because I read it needed to be about 5 gallons. Oops. It is a lot more transparent than it was before, but yeah, I would still recommend more. Honestly, that looks pretty transparent. Can I see that phone real quick? Okay, and for the next part, we're going to be draining the coolant that I just put in. Since I put in 50-50 and not 100% coolant, it is going to have to be drained, fellas. Yes, sir. Indeed. So, just drain the coolant that was put in. Maybe even turn the car on. That'll help get it out faster. And then put in another container of coolant. And that should be the 4-gallon coolant flush method. Does anyone see the sediment deposits that we were able to take out by doing the drain enough? As you can see, there was some sort of green looking flakes that seems to have deteriorated, and these are the contaminants that were inside of the coolant. Alright, for this last part of the video, I'm just going to show you the different transparencies. So this is just the old coolant. This is with 1 gallon of distilled water flushing through the system. And this is the 2nd gallon flushed through the system. So as you can see, it's not fully transparent, but it is transparent enough to kind of see through it a little bit. You can kind of see the street with it. That's pretty transparent. And since I put in another gallon of coolant and then drained it, it should be drained quite enough with the 3 gallons of fluid in order to say that it's been properly flushed. But I would also recommend maybe even more distilled water, just because it's not fully transparent yet. Alright, job's done. Time to lower the car. Oh, that was a little bit too fast. That's okay, car lowered.